Well, hey guys, how are you? We're getting to the end of the week, the end of the holiday season. So happy 2020. Glad to be here with you. Want to talk about paralegal accountability. This is such an important topic. That's why I used a to-do list, a calendar, and another item that I teach in my course. That was what I call the trifecta, so that when an attorney walks in my office and asks me what I'm working on, I know right off, it's on the tip of my tongue, and I have my to-do list sitting there with it all lined out. There's no guessing. The trust builds when you operate in a very organized way and you're not slacking off. However, when an attorney walks into your office when you take a vacation day, or walks into your cubicle or your workspace and sees a 1.5 foot high pile of filing on the floor that just isn't being done because you've been busy chatting on instant messenger or something similar, or FaceTiming people because the boss is away, that's a real story. So hi Destiny, good to see you. Thanks for being here, everybody, and everybody who's going to watch this on replay. Thank you for watching. Very important topic. When I tell you to look at your career as a career, not a 9-to-5 job, that should change your outlook on what you're building. And that you're not just employed in a 9-to-5 job, that you are building, number one, a reputation, and number two, a total career. You know, if you want to. But if you want to be an employee and that's all you ever see yourself as, that's very limiting to you. And you will just float along, never improving yourself and just skidding by. But the people who slack off hurt the rest of us. The people who don't have an accountability system, even if it's just between them and the paper in front of them, to say, okay, I'm working on this project, and you did discuss it with the attorney as to what you should be working on first. As you become more experienced, you still have those discussions, but you'll know that probably a legal brief will come before correspondence, but not always if the attorney wants that letter out to a client that day because he had a phone call with the client and he wants to confirm what they spoke about in the letter. So be aware that communication between you and the attorney is high priority, and don't be shocked that some attorneys despise communicating. They want to hide in their offices. Others are people persons, okay? And they want to be out talking to the clients and to you. And then there's everything in between. So what do you gain when you are honest and accountable for what you're doing every day? Well, you gain trust from the attorney. I learned that by being totally honest. What if you make a mistake? What did you do when you were being brought up, when you were a child, a teenager living at home, and you did something wrong? Did you try to hide it? A lot of children, me included, did that. I learned to be a very, very good liar to avoid the wrath of my mother. So we carry that with us into the workspace, afraid that we're going to be yelled at. Well, if you're in that situation and you're yelled at because you made a mistake, you probably don't want to be there. But if you're being honest and say, I really messed up, and you talk to the attorney, I've done that where early in my career where I said, I think I made a mistake with this. And they said, well, let's talk about it and figure it out. And then the attorney would reassure me, now not every attorney does that they made mistakes too, and they all do. But it can be a challenge if your MO, your modus operandi, meaning how you operated in your life before you went into the legal field was to hide mistakes, to try to figure it out before the boss found out, it's really not a great way to run your career in the legal field. Okay, so if anybody reacts in an extremely negative way when you're being upfront and honest, then it's on them. Okay, it's really, you're doing the right thing by being honest about your mistake, and then you try to figure out, and an attorney has asked me when I was new to the field, and said, well, how are we going to not do this in the future, make this mistake again? And then we had safeguards we had to put in place. And believe me, the attorney was lacking in not having certain safeguards in place too. So it's not all on us, all right? But we have to try hard not to make mistakes. That's why I love for you to learn so much before you go into the legal field, so that you're not swimming in the dark in deep water. Okay, that's what it feels like when you start. When you are honest and you admit that you made a mistake, what do you give up? Well, there's an illusion that you don't make mistakes. That's what you're giving up, and that's not reality. Everybody makes mistakes. What happens, a beautiful thing that happens, is you start to look at solutions for avoiding that mistake in the future. That's what I mean when I tell you in video after video that paralegals are problem solvers. We solve the problems for the most part in the law firm. When I was first married, I was not a problem solver. It wasn't taught in my family. You were ridiculed if you made a mistake, and that's how you learn to avoid it. But that's how you also, in my family, learn to avoid telling the truth. And so I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that type of mother, although a lot of kids, you know, they're intimidated by us enough because we're a parent, where they're going to avoid having a sit-down type of talk, or being chastised because they were told to do something they didn't, then it all blew up in their face, you know. So yeah, it's not a perfect world, but a professional, an attorney, should not be screaming at the employees. And so when you make a mistake, if that's happening, or some of you are already in your first job and that's happening there, that's not acceptable. It is by no means acceptable. So you become the problem solver, you're solution focused, because you're, instead of lying and trying to put it under the rug, you're bringing it out and saying, this is the error I made, okay? There's nothing like being honest. I've seen attorneys just go like this, heave a sigh of relief when I said, I made this mistake. This is, and I would be so beating myself up. They would say, okay, let's fix it. And let's figure out how not to do it again, like that this doesn't fall through the cracks. We become, if we do not tell the truth and own up and are accountable for our mistakes or our goof ups, we become we are a great storyteller, and we are the excuse meisters, the master of excuses. And you know, any adult with a brain in their head can see somebody that is an excuse meisters. But if only they did, blah, blah. I just, sometimes I accepted the blame for somebody else, and then we worked out a problem. Why? Because I had broad shoulders and I felt they were weak. And then I said, let's not go through this anymore. Let's figure this out. When I walked into one law firm and saw a file cabinet, and one of the bottom drawers was about a foot high, it had tons of filing in there. It was being hidden because the file clerk was expected to file all this, and this poor young girl had no idea how to file. In legal, it's done differently, okay? Hang on, guys, because the Wi-Fi is starting to give a little bit of a fit. Others, the other pro is that others will trust you implicitly when you do your proofreading. That's being accountable for the document you're typing or creating. You're proofreading your work and not expecting the attorneys to, and they will start to trust you implicitly with the work you're doing, and that you're top notch and you're not trying to be lazy and think that the attorney's your proofreader. Okay. Some people are obsessed with looking good rather than being truthful. Don't be that person. All right. And finally, the pros of owning up to your mistakes and being held accountable, and not just with mistakes, but with your workload, and saying, oh, here's my to-do list, and so far this morning I have done everything that I have a check mark next to. The attorney may look at that and go, could you stop what you're doing and then work on this? And go, sure. Okay, no arguments, no rolling of the eyes, none of the sighing, no drama, just do it. Okay. They will respect you, they will trust you, they will trust you that you're understanding something that you may not know, that they're getting, somebody's breathing down their neck to get something done, but you weren't in that conversation. So just assume that they need this done if they're asking you to do it. No arguments, okay? Remember who pays your salary. It's the client, but the attorney has to put it in, in your direct deposit. I find that people who don't want to own up to being accountable and having a to-do list, or understanding they should have a calendar, or knowing where they are on every single case they're working on, are just being ultra comfortable and not interested in their own job, and that somebody is waiting in the wings to replace you if you cop that attitude. There's always somebody else. You are not indispensable. You always have to remember that. They'll just hire somebody else if you can't step into that role. So remember, you are not so special to them that they're going to keep you if you have this air of, oh, well, didn't get done, or I made that mistake, I put that under the rug and they won't find out. They'll find out eventually, and your reputation should be everything to you, and the quality of your work, and never being too comfortable in your job. Okay, always strive for excellence, but you can't control everything. But you can control how honest you are, and that you're operating with honor and integrity in the job, and that you are taking the high road, not the low road. Okay, your accountability also involves gossip. If you get a rush in tearing other people down, I would say don't go in the legal field, because your days will be numbered in the legal field. I know it goes on in every office, but I would avoid it like the plague and take the high road. Okay, as a person who was a victim of gossip because of the fact that that's the first day on the job that happened. That was because they didn't like my boss, and it was snowballing. I stepped back out of that fray and would go out and have lunch with friends from previous law firms I worked at to avoid it. And I did that for 2 to 3 months before that all settled down. And then the shakeup happened and it all calmed down. So take the high road. If you take the low road, it will affect your career, no doubt. So the pros and cons of, there's really no con for me, the negative of being accountable. It's all good. It's all good. If an attorney doesn't like the fact that you're on the ball and you're accountable, then you don't want to work there. Okay, if an attorney doesn't like the fact that you ask good questions and talks down to you with disrespect, do you really want to work there? No. That's gross insecurity coming out of the attorney to treat anybody like that. So no, you don't want to work there. Nobody said you had to. That's emotional abuse. So don't do that. But accountability is everything in many different areas, okay? Inner communication, the inside relationships within the law firm, and how you treat the clients, and making sure you're on top of everything. And some attorneys don't manage the law firm well, their workload well, but you have to do that. Okay? All right, so if you have any questions whatsoever, you can feel free to ask them now, because we've got several people here watching live. If you have any questions whatsoever, just type it in and I'll wait for you. If not, I'll sign off, but I'll just wait a minute to see if you have anything you want to ask. I use the accountability option every single day, because I want to be able to answer the question, what if the attorney walked in right now and asked me, what have I gotten done today? What would I say? That's what I think about, and that's my system on the to-do list, is I know what I'm supposed to be working on. When you start the job, that will be the thing you have to learn. Hi, Destiny. Well, that, if you're new, that kind of stuff is going to happen. But yeah, to a new paralegal, yeah. What I had happen in the first job, Destiny, was exactly that. Even though the paralegal there was a great mentor, she was, most of us don't want to answer phones, but all the phones were basically on me, but she would help. I can't say that she did not help. She absolutely did. But I had to do all the filing, plus legal work, plus run errands to fill up the supply cabinet, including paper and all that stuff, cartridges for the printer, all of it, and then food, like snacks. So I had to go to Office Depot and then go to the grocery store, and that wasted a lot of time. That wasted 2 to 3 hours in one day, and I would try to only do that about once a month. And I felt that would have been nice for her to help with that a little bit, and not just be the paralegal who was doing a great job teaching me a whole lot. So I didn't say anything, obviously, about that. I just, like a sponge, was trying to soak up everything. When you make a to-do list, Destiny, you've got to list out everything you're working on. And they should be having a meeting and going over the cases at least once a week, even if it's only a half hour, between the staff and the attorney. And it might just be the attorneys that you're working for and the people that work on those cases, and that's it, not the whole law firm. But we did a whole law firm staff and attorney meeting every Friday morning. It wasn't being done that way, but the senior partner and I talked it over a couple week period, and then he instituted it, and we brought in breakfast. So as a new person, it's hard for you to suggest that, because people will be like, well, what do you know? That type of thing. Soak everything up like a sponge, but have a to-do list, and understand that happens in the first jobs, because the paralegals can kind of get away with it. And I felt like and you're not the only one going through this, by the way, that is on this page. I soaked up as much as I could. I found shortcuts that I did. This is 30 years ago, that we were using WordPerfect, which was more user-friendly than Microsoft Word, honestly, having worked in both. And I found shortcuts to do things to speed everything up, because I was lacking time. And Destiny, I'm sure you can relate to this. So knowing what has to get done first, What's the highest priority when work is being dumped on you? What's the highest priority that has to get done that day? And you only have so many hours in the day. So that other stuff is going to have to wait. If you can't get it all done, say, well, I've been working on this. And I also reminded the paralegal, well, I'm new and I'm still absorbing how to do everything and still have to ask a lot of questions. What will happen is you will build up speed over the next 6 months. And then you'll be flying. But what stops that overloading of you is having those meetings. And I don't know how open they are to doing that and any of that, you know? So, yeah, it's the meetings we instituted staff meetings that I was overseeing. I would put out I'd get their questions from the staff. I put out an agenda, quick agenda in email, send it to all of them, what we were going to discuss. And I kept it to 1 hour because we had a lot of work to do. The first 2 that we had, an attorney oversaw it and it ran for 3 hours. It was ridiculous. So she asked me to take it over, and I was relieved because when we got back to our desk and it's 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon, we have 2 hours to get caught up. That's insanity. So having a staff meeting with just staffers to go over who's working on what, if they're open to that, but it's hard for you to suggest that, but you can always I wouldn't talk to the paralegal about it. If the attorney talks with you ever, it might be something that you can suggest having like caseload discussion, you know, every week. And if the attorney is open to you and talks to you, then that's what I would do, is start to put a bug in the ear. I had the senior partner stop by my little office and say to me, I'm really worried about the deadlines. If we're getting everything done, I don't even know where we stand on any of the cases. This is not unusual in many law firms that I've worked in, didn't know. And they had no way of measuring this, and some have it nailed, others do not. And that's negligence of cases. That's what that is. That's not being on top of the cases if you don't know where you are in each of the cases. And some of the attorneys were really at fault for this. And it's easily solvable with meetings will drive you crazy if you're in too many of them, because then you're not in your space working. But when you can have a weekly meeting to go over cases, who's working on what, it starts to bring out everything everybody's doing, and the truth is out then. And that's my point, is the truth comes out. One paralegal in our law firm, a law firm I used to work in, she missed a deadline, yet it was kept very quiet as to who this was. I didn't know who it was. But when it's a very small law firm, but when we had that attorney staff meeting on Friday mornings where we all had breakfast and it was brought in, and we just spent about an hour talking. It builds relationships, but it also holds everybody accountable for what they're working on. And it was brought out that whoever was working on this case dropped a deadline and missed something, and that's unacceptable. You can't do that because we're representing the clients. So the truth had to come out so that all of the staff were not blamed for the negligence of one person. And that's what those meetings do. And it was not to humiliate her, but it was being hidden. So I know some of you here can relate to that if you're already in a law firm. Is that every law firm? No. But if the attorneys very rarely know how to manage their law firms properly, and they don't know how to manage staff. So sometimes the staff can run amok they can run and do things they want to do, and where it's really not acceptable, but it's being done. And the meetings are a great way to stop the shenanigans, you know? Yeah. It's hard for a newbie, brand new paralegal, brand new staffer to walk in and start saying, well, if we did this, you come off as a major diva, and you burn bridges that way. You want to speak to the person who will be able to give you the result that you need. So that was, for me, the senior partner, who, because my dad worked as a supermarket manager, and he knew that because we had talked, he loved working in the supermarket before he became an attorney, and he loved the manager at the supermarket. So there was this bond between he and I, because I also worked as a cashier in the same chain, not with my dad, but same chain at 16. And we would talk about that, and we built this, you know, relationship about that. And then he knew I had run businesses of my own, and he talked to me about holding attorneys accountable and holding staff accountable, and how can we do that. And there are, you know, I use a simple process. Well, I use the trifecta, which is the calendar, the to-do list, and another document that I share in my class. So understanding where you are on each case, I will be pleasantly surprised if whoever's currently in a law firm, if you're currently experiencing, you know, that type of organization. I know a lot of people use to-do list and calendar, but if you said, well, what are we doing in this case? People run to the file cabinet, okay? That's really ridiculous. So, yeah. It's not acceptable to not know how your case is progressing, okay? Oh, thanks, Yvette. Glad you're here. Happy New Year to you. Thanks for being here. Thanks, everybody, for hanging with me today. So when I say use this process daily, well, I can assure you that I get in the morning and I'm looking at the to-do list. I'm looking at the calendar. When I leave at night, I don't want to think about work. I want to detox, because your mind needs that, and focus on something else, creative, go out and do something, blah, blah. But don't think about work, and it reduces stress to have everything organized and you know where you stand. But you'll walk into a law firm and they won't have any of that nailed down. So that's part of what I teach you in my course, because I want you to have as you know, little stress as possible. That's my goal, whether it's your first job or your 10th. All right, so that is it for today. It's one of the most important topics for the paralegal, because otherwise your gut is going to grind. You're going to develop an ulcer. You're not going to know where you stand on anything. It's going to be stress, 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 and it's like running around clueless, and it's not necessary. Okay. All right. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being here. I got to run an errand and then get back to my hubby, who's still recuperating from back surgery, but doing great. So thanks for your prayers. And I will be going. So have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next video. Okay. Take care. Love you all. Have a great 2020. I know you're going to. All right. Take care. Bye.